listening to the best of the Martha Zoller Show. To hear the full show each day, tune in to AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN or log in to accesswdun.com and click the Listen Live button from 9 to 11 Monday through Friday. Welcome back to the Martha Zoller Show. It's always great to talk to Roger Gewolb. And you have this kind of semi-new venture, right, where you're calling yourself the Gospel According to Roger. Tell us about that.
Oh, it's a couple of years, at least a couple of years old. We've been broadcasting the gospel for Dr. Roger. It started with another station and then moved on, and now it's my own channel on YouTube and a bunch of other platforms. And I've long been known in the UK and elsewhere as Dr. Roger on programs. So it's Doctor. Somebody thought about it because when it began on Sunday mornings about the same time as 3 or 4 very famous news programs on television that have been around for decades and decades. So it took some of the audience away from them because we attempted to bring a fresh new approach, Martha. And of course it was Sunday morning, so the producer said, let's call it the gospel. And I said, okay, why not?
Why not? Yeah. So you are also running for office and those elections are coming up. How's that going?
It's going fine. I've always tried to be, not that easy for someone like me, but I've always tried to be nonpartisan and as a broadcaster, present both sides, and not affiliate with any particular politician or political party. But they asked me to be a member of Parliament for the Brexit Party when we were back then going through all of that, and I declined. And they came back again, this time, same people, Nigel Farage and his associates, and asked me to stand in the local elections, which are very big on May the 7th, which aren't usually very big, but are now very big because they're really going to be a test of Keir Starmer and his dreadful government, and also the end of the duopoly in British politics. There are new parties such as Reform emerging. So I said I would stand, and it's the 7th of May, and I just looked at this morning's voting intention figures, which show Reform very, very far ahead in the lead, ahead of all the other parties, to win the local elections. That would really be something. Everybody's quite excited about that and out campaigning. So,
this would be like our county commission or city council, that kind of thing, those type of elections here in the United States.
That's right. Yeah.
That's exciting. Well, I wish you the best because I tell you, it seems like there needs to be a lot of changes, not only, with us or with you and everywhere in between. It seems like common sense is starting to win in different places around the world, and I think that's a good thing.
It is, but I was just shown a poll a few minutes ago. I forget whose poll. I think it started with a Y or a V. I'm sorry, I forgot. That Trump, 33% approve and 67% disapprove of him, and I've just received a request to appear on Irish radio tomorrow morning to discuss why all of Trump's supporters, Tucker, Joe Rogan, Alex Jones, Marjorie, are all deserting him.
Yeah, and you know what I would say about that? I would say that those folks fly in the wind anyway. And Tucker has lost so much credibility. We've discovered that he's getting a lot of money from some of these people that he's now supporting, and also that a lot of his support, his viewers aren't real viewers, and they're bots and things like that. So I think it's really hard to read polls, but if you compare President Trump to where he is compared to Obama at the same time, 6 years in, as well as Bush, he's in a similar neighborhood. It's not unusual, and especially when we're at war, there are a lot of people that looked at Trump as the guy that was not going to get us into wars. And I still think that this is going to be a short war. I don't think it's going to be anything like what we've seen in the past, but I think all in all, Trump is moving things in a way that it's going to work out for him, because it seems to always do that. But again, this midterm is the Democrats to lose historically, except for 2002 when we had just been hit on 9/11 a year before. Every party in power loses some power in the midterms. So we've got to get a message. We are all over the place. When I say we, I mean conservatives, Republicans. We're all over the place on the message. And we have got to talk, more appropriately. Got to get people like Scott Bessent out more. Scott Bessent explained that actually because of our energy independence, that the overall price of oil that's in the pipeline is actually lower in the future. The commodities are lower in the future, which is how we measure that stuff, and that it's going to be better for us. But we don't have those voices out there that are doing that. So it aggravates me because, I'm all about messaging. You've got to have the right message out there, because people are lazy. Roger, just one final point. People are lazy because they don't want to sacrifice. Let's just be honest here. It's not like it was in World War II, where people are going to do victory gardens and they're going to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
If they go to the pump one time and have to pay more, they're mad.
Yeah. Well, what I said to this Irish station when they asked me to give them a preliminary idea of what my views were, I said, the Joe Rogans and Marjorie's these personalities like Elon, they're going to clash with Trump. These people are going to fall out with each other. I don't think that means what the masses think. But then, of course, there is this poll that, 2/3 don't approve of his presidency. But then, that's exactly the point that you've just made. It's midterm time. It's the usual thing. Obama and Bush were in the same place. And that's what I'm going to say tomorrow. So, but anyway, to get back to your point, these elections, which ordinarily would pass fairly uneventfully, Martha, are a bit bigger this time. People really expect Starmer to be, and the Labour Party, which has just proved, in my personal opinion, so useless, so incompetent and inept at even the most basic steps of running a government in the country, they're going to be wiped out. The Tories, the Conservatives are already toast. Nobody trusts them anymore. But the Green Party is going to make some inroads, not the kind of inroads they are saying they're going to make, I don't think. But, they are, what's the technical word for it? Nuts.
Well,
they don't want any armies anymore. They don't want any borders anymore. They are going to close all the prisons. And before they do that, they are going to give the prisoners the right to vote. They want unbridled immigration. They are not going to double down. They are going to at least quintuple down on net zero carbon nonsense. And it's just going to cost a fortune if you think we've seen a cost of living crisis. And as I said on one program the other day, it's like trying to speak in a kindergarten and tell people there are no pink ponies for Christmas.
Well, and we saw what happened in our own country by giving the Democrats power for the last 4 years, and that's what Trump's having to fix. But I want to get to something a lot more exciting.
But let me just say the Dems are reasonable people compared to the Greens. The Greens are living in fantasy land. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I had a young lady on my show yesterday that's running. This is the first time we've had a Democratic primary in our district in about 25 years. And so she's running against a more moderate Democrat. And she's a progressive. And, you know, my first interview with someone that's a political person, I don't attack them. I want them to hang themselves, if you want to know what I mean. I ask them questions. So I asked her a question, and I said...
You know that in Britain right now, you probably could have 6 coppers at your door for saying that.
That's right. That's right.
Seriously.
That's right.
That's what Starmer has done to free speech.
Well, I asked her what would she want to be a part of the squad? Did she see herself as that kind of Democrat? And she said, "Oh yes, that would be an honor." Well, that will disqualify her in my plus 26 Republican district, but It'll be fun. But King Charles is coming next week with Queen Camilla for the 250th anniversary of America. I am so excited that I've been invited to come to the joint session of Congress for that speech. So I was informed by the British consul here that since I saw him in 1977 when he was Prince Charles, it's very unusual for an American to see the king twice in their lifetime in America.
Absolutely. Well, you know, he's been very well regarded all this time, but since Easter, he's fallen out of favor quite a bit. He did not deliver an Easter address, which was very disappointing, I'm sure, to many, many millions of Brits. And he was accused of being an Islamist, you know, just.
Yeah, he's not. He just tries to be, you know, I went back and did some research on that, and there's only been a couple of times that.
What did you find?
That there's only been a couple of times that there's been an Easter message, and the royal family put out a lot of messages about Easter. I mean, they did the thing they do on Maundy, Thursday. They were out doing that.
Yeah.
So I think that, but there is a big problem in the UK with Muslim mayors of these cities, and we got that in New York now. We've got it in Detroit. We've got it in other places, and these folks don't want to play. They are not Americans in the same way. They may be U.S. citizens, but they're not Americans.
Absolutely.
The way they look at the world.
Absolutely. I mean, I was just in Florida, as you know, and people there were saying to me that, you know, the whole place, like London and New York, is becoming like Mecca. I mean, there are just so many foreign people, Muslim people there. And, you know, they've taken over New York, this guy said to me. And but this is an old redneck Florida boy. I mean, he's been down there, you know, his family all his life. And he just said, well, you know, they come down here and they think they're going to push us out. But the thing is, they pushed him out, and they want to push the Jews out of New York, and they're pushing him out of London. But they ain't going to push no one out down here, because I'm going to tell you, the Cubans aren't going to stand for it. The Puerto Ricans, they haven't got the cojones up in New York, but the Cubans here, they don't let anybody mess on their turf. So believe me, the Muslims are going to get nowhere here in Miami.
Yeah, and I think that we've got to, I hope that we're at a place where we are going to get over this hump we're in. I was very encouraged when I heard the foreign minister of the UAE, who was a female. She had a scarf on, but she was not, you know, covered up. And she said, look, we in the UAE took our money and made our country a place that people wanted to come to. And Iran, you know, used their money to create division and terrorism, and weapons. That's right. So good luck on your election.
Thank you.
And we will talk, you know, right around that time. So I'll look forward to that. And as always, it's always great to have you on the Martha Zoller Show.
You too. Thank you so much.
It's where North Georgia comes to talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Bill Crane is joining me right now, and it's always great to talk to him. We're close to the primary, and the final day to register to vote was on Monday. And the primary is going to be on the 19th, and early voting starts on the 27th. And I just pulled my ballot, Bill, and it's very confusing this year. I mean, there's stuff all over the place. Luckily, we have a lot of contested races. There are a lot of candidates, even on either side when we pull an additional ballot. But then there's questions, too, which always drive me crazy.
Well, and there's more judicial races with opponents than usual, and we've got a couple of marquee judicial races that are, though officially nonpartisan, are looking very partisan. So imagine if we have to do this in the fall with hand-marked paper ballots that are 10 and 12 pages long. But, yeah, I do think we're going to have some trouble with people understanding the ballots. There always is a challenge when you have first-time voters kind of returning to the process. And I'm hoping we don't have election officials that have to go through the emergency procedures if we don't have a special session after the primary and runoff to deal with this law that's to go into effect July the 1st relative to the QR codes, which would require basically all the counties to print out the paper ballots and have them available at every precinct, which may sound simple, but when you're talking about 3 or 3.5 million people voting, is not.
So yesterday, Virginia had this vote on a new map, and it looked all day like, and this is the way it always looks in Virginia, that Republicans are always ahead all day, and then when Fairfax County comes in, which it usually comes in late, it's kind of their Fulton County, it always comes in late. Then it ended up that the measure was passed, and they're going to have these really crazy looking districts. Now, I know what they say. They say, oh, well, Texas started it. But if you look at the Texas map, Bill, it's a different map, and I don't like the fact that they're changing in midterm, if you will. But they weren't crazy-looking districts. This Virginia map, I think it opens up a Pandora's box of what could come. And it's basically one huge district that's got all the Republicans in it, geographically, and then these, like, strips that go all over the state. I mean, it's a crazy-looking map. Remember the Barbell District that was a state senate district in Georgia when they were making Bill Stevens pay, and
when he had to walk across the little footbridge.
It was like a barbell district that took 7 hours to drive in Georgia, up in North Georgia. That's what I think about when I look at that map.
That or Cynthia McKinney's Rorschach ink blot that ran from South DeKalb County all the way down to Savannah back in the early part of the 1990s.
Absolutely. And the founders understood.
It's unfortunate that's not what the founders wanted, but we're at this place of hyper-partisan divide that if you do this, I'll do that, and if I do this, you do that, until we get past this.
Do you think there's because it seems like Abigail Spanberger's numbers have dropped like a rocket. Now, she won this vote, but her popularity, and in this particular case, she was asked this question during the election. She said no, she wasn't going to do it, and then she did it. And so, it's making me crazy, Bill. It really is.
Well, I wish that we would start seeing, as we're looking ahead to the presidential primaries in 2028, leaders that are both more centrist and have a message that's more about doing and solving and less about attacking the other side. I don't know that we're going to get that anytime soon, but I think we're going to need, from the top and from the front of the parties, both the Republicans and the Democrats, people willing to put forth a vision as opposed to beating up the other side being the answer, and that's just not where we are right now as a nation. We'll get through this, but I think we will see more states on Team Blue and Team Red go through this exercise of reapportionment, which, I'd like to see perhaps Congress put forth a law that holds it back to once every 10 years. We don't have new census data to base the new maps on. All we've got is some demographic shifts within the state.
And estimates. And they do these estimates, but they're not real.
Right, and those aren't real data, and to some extent it's self-reported, but it's much more easily politicized, as we saw in Texas, as we're seeing in Virginia, as we saw in California, even though the voters there didn't choose to do it. And if basically each state at any random time is redrawing maps, nothing is certain, and nothing is demonstrably fair. And I hate that word; it's overused somewhat. But I'm one who believes in you don't even need to divide counties up a lot for this reason. It's
I agree.
Communities of similar interest.
Now, let's talk a little bit more about close to home because we're coming up with this primary, and I am starting to see all the television ads. I mean, all the way down to my county commissioner is running television ads, and they can, I'm on, I don't have a regular cable subscription, but I have other subscriptions, and I'm getting ads, so they must know.
Yeah, it's on the streaming services.
Yeah, on the streaming services, I'm getting ads. And I think that there's somebody that thinks I speak Spanish because I get a lot of Spanish ads, which I think is very interesting. Lynn goes,
You're just an open person in a county with...
Yeah.
You're in a county with a significant...
it's true, but like half the ads are in English, and then you get this random Spanish ad, but that's fine. But this week we saw Burt Jones put out an ad with his children in it, which was a very nice ad, actually. But he's still, and this is my assessment, he's still not talking for himself very much in these ads. It's basically a tagline and the traditional thing. You're starting to see the other candidates, whether it's Raffensperger, Carr, or Jackson, doing a lot more of their own position ads. And, I would like to hear more from Burt Jones directly.
I personally think it's very effective when candidates talk, if they're good at it.
Yeah.
Some aren't. Some cannot read a teleprompter. But if they're good at expressing themselves or their vision, it's very effective. And it used to be, I'm not sure if it's still federal law, but in federal races, if the candidate put their voice tagging it at the end saying, this campaign and paint farm, pound covered after there was a further discounted rate available for using the candidate's voice to indicate a tie between the message and the candidate themselves. A lot of this, as you know, has to do with what the consultants are saying. And I'm mystified in the governor's race and in some of the other races, the fascination with Second Amendment. It is a Republican primary, but seeing Brad Raffensperger, who I like and admire, toting a rifle, and Chris Carr talking about shooting drones out of the sky, I just kind of wonder, who are the voters they're aiming this at? Because the hard right, I'm guessing, are not in their corner and are going to be either with Rick Jackson or Burt Jones. I don't see that as their voting base. But, again, I'm not running their campaigns.
Yeah, absolutely. I moderated several races at the Hall County event this Saturday morning. I did the morning, and Jacqueline Harn did the afternoon. And it was interesting to see that we really didn't get any of the traditional governor's candidates. Burt Jones did come in around 1 o'clock and did a kind of a speech, not a panel. Right. They gave him 5 minutes. He asked for 5 minutes, and he did not sit on the panel with the candidate, which I can't even remember his name. It wasn't one of the big ones. And I can understand that. He was doing it, but he scheduled an event up at Jaymore Farms on the same day that he had originally turned down the Hall County event. And so that created a little bit of a problem. But again, that's inside baseball. I mean, the average person is not going to know that there. And then Rick Jackson was here at a Fraternal Order of Police pancake breakfast. So what I'm seeing is that what Jackson's doing is that he understands, I think, that most people that go to GOP meetings made their mind up last October. You know what I mean? They're
activists and they've made commitments.
They're activists. They made commitments. And so he's creating kind of his own path of events. He did do Cobb County Women, which everybody ought to do because they're a huge group. But, he's going around the state kind of creating his own events.
Right, and not just speaking to GOP activist voters, which I think, again, you and I have had this conversation. If the GOP party is a shrinking tent, and I believe it is because of some of the way it's being led, you've got to, if you want to win in the fall, have connections and a base that's beyond the party, even during the primary and runoff. You can do, but with his resources, you can play to both audiences at the same time. You use your media and your direct mail and your online to hit the rank and file, the people you've got the names and addresses of that you almost know for certain are going to be voting in the Republican primary. And then you use your time on the trail and one-on-one and personal appearances to a broader base. And I think that, you've got smart people running his campaign.
It's very interesting on the Democrat side that even here in Hall County, while we are having some growth in our Democratic Party, or at least this No Kings group that meets, it's interesting. They've had a big split over Israel. There's a number of people that are traditional Democrats. They support Israel, and they don't like the language that's being used about Israel. So while they still say they're voting Democrat, they are not going to meetings anymore. And I saw the same thing happen in Gwinnett County, too. And so I think it's we're kind of in a transition period of what's a Democrat and what's a Republican.
Well, particularly for that issue in Israel and the war, both wars that are going on, still one kind of very quiet and the other one on ceasefire. John Ossoff has got some trouble with those voters. And he, I believe, is in a much better position right now to win re-election and hold that seat. But the Democratic base has always included a healthy number of Jewish voters, and that appears to be fractured right now.
Yeah, it was funny. When I went to the temple for an event when Anat Sultan Daydan left to go back to Israel, and we got a new consul general, and Senator Warnock sent in a video, and they played it. Other people did, but John Ossoff was noticeably absent and did not have a video. And I don't know if that's he chose not to make one or if he wasn't asked because of how a lot of people felt about him. But he's got a problem with the Jewish community in Atlanta. Now, I don't know if that will transition into him losing votes or not, but he does have a problem there.
I think it translates into a lack of enthusiasm. I don't know that those voters will go out and vote for Republicans, but I think I can see a lot of them sitting home and not voting at all. It's a midterm.
So what are you looking for in, kind of your overall? Are you making any predictions yet?
On which race?
On the Senate one, on the Republican side, and then the governor's race.
Yeah, on the Senate side, even though Buddy Carter is coming out with some hard ads against Mike Collins, I still see it as Mike Collins' race to lose on the Senate primary.
It is. It is. I agree with that.
For all of the governor's work.
There's still a lot of undecided, though. There's still a lot of undecided.
There are. That's his only opportunity, but I just don't see Republicans settling on someone who didn't even vote in the 2020 election. I mean, he's only really engaged as a voter in the last few years and has no party history. I don't see it.
Right.
On the governor's race right now, Rick Jackson, to my mind, is the front runner. The question is who's in that runoff today. I'd say probably Burt Jones, but I think there's a possibility with the right messaging and some good, strong debate performances, which kind of start Monday with Georgia Public Broadcasting having statewide debates among all the major candidates for governor and Senate. There is a possibility for Brad Raffensperger. Chris Carr, who you and I both really care for and like, does not seem to be able to break out of single digits.
I still think he's got the best resume. I really do.
And probably a lot of people you and I know well will be voting for him, but that they are knowledgeable insiders, and there just are not enough of them.
Yeah, I agree, but I do agree with you that I think we're going to end up with a Trump. A Trump a Trump candidate in first place, whether Burt Jones likes it or not, people perceive Rick Jackson as a Trumpy guy too. Okay, so it'll be one of those guys.
The question is if the president will move his endorsement.
He won't, but not for now anyway. And then I think that either Raffensperger or Carr gets into second place. I really do. I think that's. I think we'll see what happens.
Based on turnout, I don't disagree with you. And if there's a strong turnout in Metro Atlanta, there's a shot there. On the Democratic side, Keisha Lance Bottoms is going to be the nominee, or is going to come out strong in the primary. The question is, could she do that without a runoff? If you saw the Channel 11 Atlanta debate last week, her performance was not strong, and Jeff Duncan struggled. And the strongest performer on that stage was Michael Thurmond.
He really was, but then he went far left on all his positions, though. I was so disappointed in that, even though, you know what I mean? It's like, and obviously I'm a Republican, I'm not going to vote in the Democrat primary, but I felt like, he felt like he had to. I haven't talked to him about it, but that's the way he went far left.
No, it's what, again, the consultants are saying this is where the base is.
This is where the base is, and you got to win. Yeah.
This is the prior generation of the prior generation of Democrats and voters, and if you don't play to the current generation, you can't get in.
Yeah, I'm old. Now, we do have a young lady running in the Democratic primary here in the 9th District. We have a primary between a finance guy, retired, Rabin County. His name's Nick Alex, and then a young girl, 27 years old, who is just was on my show, proudly a progressive, and said she would love to be a part of the squad. And she is the second person running in that primary.
I'm glad to see both parties recruiting and candidates in their 20s and 30s getting into the process. I was getting a little concerned. There aren't a lot of Houston Keyneses out there, that we were going to see both parties just attrit away. But it does appear there are younger folks engaging.
And I just want,
the keys.
I'm hoping that our next nominee for president is somebody like Marco Rubio who can communicate. I still would love to see Nikki Haley run again. I'm not convinced, and I hear J.D. Vance isn't either. I'm not convinced that he's the next guy. I'm just not. So
I don't think J.D. Vance is the next guy.
Yeah.
And I would agree with you that of the suspects in the administration, Marco Rubio's got the best shot.
Absolutely. Bill, thanks for being with me today. I love talking with you every week.
Take care.
Putting the talk in news talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Dennis Leid is a gentleman I got to know a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, and he's come down. He has an interesting story, too, and he's come down from New York to get involved in kind of messaging. I like to call it messaging. So welcome to the program, Dennis. How are you?
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be on the Martha Zoller Show.
And be close to the mic.
Thank you.
Anyway, so tell folks about you and how you ended up here in Gainesville, Georgia.
Okay.
Because you don't sound like one of us.
I know, and I don't look like one of you either.
Oh, that's okay.
I get that a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable with that. My name is Dennis Leid. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. And the short end of the story, my fiance at the time, she's from New York City. Her name is Kenya. Originally from Trinidad, but she lived most of her life in New York City. She moved to Georgia first in Gwinnett County. And I just followed my heart. She got an opportunity to work in Gainesville, and that's where we ended up, in the north of Georgia, in Gainesville, in the hills.
So how long have you been here?
A year.
Mm-hmm. A year. And tell me about your background.
So I have an interesting background. Man, I wish I had more time to talk about a background. However, born and raised in Brooklyn, always been creative, just always tried to find my way. Just find a way to use my creativity and my influence to help others that's already in business or just looking to tap into their inner self, because everyone's, like, a lot of people are trying to be something instead of themselves. Using yourself is actually the best resource that you could have. Everyone else is taken. Be yourself. So I try to tap in. I try to get people to tap into that, so they could be more successful in what they're looking to accomplish.
Do you mind telling me how old you are?
43.
Oh, okay. So I'm a digital immigrant. Okay, so I started out with no computer on my desk. Maybe we had a copy machine.
Yeah.
But, and you had maybe a phone with multiple lines on it. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And then I've had to learn all this stuff.
Yeah.
I was a stay-at-home mom, and when I went back to work, if I hadn't had one of those brick laptops and a BlackBerry, I couldn't have gone back to work, because that gave me the ability to be home when the kids got home from school, but still be able to keep up with my email and, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And then when I started in radio, I'm getting ready to go on a trip to D.C. next week, and I'll be carrying basically a briefcase size thing with what we call a Comrex in there.
Okay.
And then a backpack with my mics in it, and that's it.
Minimal.
And it's something I can do myself.
Yep.
And I always have a TSA slip in my luggage, because there's wires in it, and when they screen it, they see those.
For sure,
so they open it up and they look. But when I first started doing Radio Rows, and it was the good old days, man. We would go to the White House and do a Radio Row. We'd go to the Defense Department, and Sandy, our engineer, would have to come with me, and there was like a crate of equipment that had to be set up. So it's gotten to the point that it's very personal now.
Absolutely.
And you can do the things that you're doing, and that sort of thing. So then you were kind of like, maybe you started out without a cell phone and without the digital stuff, but pretty much most of your life you've had digital stuff.
Yes.
Is that's where you are?
That's a fact. That's where I am.
So what are you trying to create these days?
So I'm a cinematographer. I Kenya and I, we own a video production called Do It Productions, and we specialize in shooting commercial advertising for different corporations and nonprofits. We also teach education about marketing and advertising. We've taught at Pratt University in New York City. We taught small business owners how to create commercials for their brands for themselves, because you'd be surprised how many people don't understand the concept of marketing and advertising. They have great ideas, they look great, they have a great product, but they fall short on the advertising of it because they don't have no knowledge. They think it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, when in all actuality it could. However, there are some cheat codes where you can do it yourself and still be successful and create visual stimulation advertising for your brand. And that's where we specialize. And just, giving people the tools so they can put the power in their own hands.
Now, one thing you're really good at is these shorts that you do, okay, the reels that you do. And they are great.
Thank you.
But it worries me that, my husband is kind of a digital immigrant also, and he got a smartphone very late, and now he's like a 13-year-old, scrolling through the reels.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? About golf, his
or
golf reels. That's what he looks at. He says, "Well, I'm just watching. I'm studying the golf game. But you're sitting there like for 3 hours doing this. It's nothing." But I worry about attention span. I worry about people not sitting and having conversations like this because all they're doing is watching.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. I think attention span. I think that's one of the that's actually one of the biggest talks about advertising. If the average person that's on the internet, they're looking at something and for maybe 3 seconds tops.
Yeah.
Now, excuse me. If you're marketing a product and the person's average attention span is 3 seconds, they're not going to know what you got going on. That's why it's so important to create a hook right in the beginning. Between the first and third second, you have to catch them. It has to be visually stimulating. We have to worry about the colors that you're wearing, the inflections that you use in your voice, and everything for someone to actually be attracted to what you're looking at.
It's funny. I do this for fun. I do this wellness podcast with Terrell Worcester, who owns the spa on Green Street.
Okay.
She was going to get into the podcast business about a year ago, and I said, you know what? That sounds like fun. It's a different thing. I'm kind of a skeptic about a lot of things she's into.
Yeah.
And so it is made for a good thing. But what we've discovered is our reels, our shorts, get thousands of views.
Who's shooting them?
Whereas if we create them through a program through YouTube. I mean, I hate to say that, but
it's okay.
but they get thousands of views, whereas our podcast might get 50.
I can help you with that, Martha.
I know you can. But that's why I mentioned it. But it is interesting how, to your point, it's getting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a short thing.
Yeah. It's important because there's, especially here in Gainesville, I've noticed, it's, to me personally, coming from New York City, it's such a small district here, such a small county. And, I'm noticing that it's powered by the small businesses. It's powered by the small businesses, and I know a lot of them are mom and pop. Some of them are, just coming into the town and making their way. But when you check them out online, their visibility doesn't match up with the storefront, with what you could experience while you're inside. That's why it's important to show the people, get the people excited before they get the people excited to want to come.
Right. I think it's so interesting because we kind of live in this digital media marketing world. I hate it. I want to get back to when I get home at night, I put my phone in the kitchen like it's a old school extension.
Yeah.
And if I hear it, I pick it up. If I don't,
it is what it is.
It is what it is.
But you're not glued to it.
I'm not glued to it because it was making me crazy, and it was taken away from my real life, which is much more important.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So if people want to know more about you, how can they do that?
You can You could check. I mean, you could just pretty much search my name in any search engine, Dennis Leid. That's DennisLeid, and you could also look up Doer Productions. That's DOER Productions with an S, and you'll find everything you need. I hope that I could service anyone that's looking to give their brand a visual facelift.
So I'm curious. I've seen you at a lot of Republican events because you've been helping Greg Poole.
Yes.
But have you gone to any of the Democrat events?
I haven't made my way to the Democratic events, and I'm getting a lot of flack behind that because, in my community, it's primarily ran by Democrats. So a lot of my friends online and people that are like, come on, you sell it out, man, you sell it out. I'm like, well, if I was working for the Democrats, y'all would have something to say about that too.
Well, it's interesting because they've started, for the first time in probably 30 years, there are Democrats up and down the ballot, and there's primaries for Democrats. Yeah. And I understand, I haven't been to the meetings yet either. I understand that they're getting a lot more people. Typically, this is what's called a plus 26 Republican district, which means they'll win by at least 26 points. That's what that means. So it's very, very Republican.
Yeah.
But I think that anywhere, it's funny because 60% of Republican primary voters live above 285 in Georgia. Okay. And so then there's some rural Georgia isn't high population, but there's a lot of Republicans there too.
Understood.
Most of the Democrats are in Atlanta and Metro Atlanta, and they are growing in that DeKalb, Fulton. Not DeKalb and Fulton have always been Democrat, or they weren't when I was a kid. They were Republican, but that was 60 years ago.
Yeah.
But it was Gwinnett and Cobb were like the biggest stronghold of the Republican Party, and they voted Democrat the last 3 times.
Okay.
But what I always tell people, if you put those 4 counties together, there are still 1.5 million Republican voters in those 4 counties.
Yeah.
There's just 3 million Democrat voters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but you still need to be there.
Absolutely.
You still need to be there because a couple 100,000 votes.
Yep.
Because we won the 2018 governor's race by 50,000 votes. And we won the 2022 by 100,000 votes.
Yeah.
So you can peel off, I like to call them squishy Republican women, okay? You can peel off some of those suburban women.
Yeah.
You can keep winning.
Yeah.
You can keep winning. Anyway, thanks for being with me today.
The pleasure was all mine.
To hear the full versions of last week's Martha Zoller shows, go to the podcast page at accesswdun.com, and you can follow me on social media at Martha Zoller.